I am obviously a friend of yours, a huge fan. What you did with Fingerprints in the Gods for me was a phenomenal thing. I had been reading 300 books on ancient civilizations up until I found yours. Mm-hmm. And I started to get really tired of it because everybody's trumpeting the same data. Everybody's got the Rhodes calculator. Everybody talks about Stonehenge. Mm-hmm. The antediluvian flood maps. And then along comes this book. I think it was 1995. I just graduated from college. Yeah. And bam, this guy has got all of the best stuff that I had seen in all these 300 books I've been reading, mm-hmm. and other stuff that I'd never found before.
Yeah.
So a lot of people know you for that.
Definitely. It's definitely my best known book, no doubt about it. Yeah.
And that was a major seller, right? Like you sold a lot of copies at the time.
About 5 million copies of that, book, of which 2.5 million in hardback in Japan.
Wow, really?
And the other 2.5 million around the world. It became a bit of a sensation.
That's incredible.
In Japan.
That's an incredible number.
It was.
And you can't do that now.
You can't do that now. It was a phenomenon. Yeah. It was one of those things. It caught a wave. There was a lot of new stuff in the air. There was a suggestion that maybe we've got the story of civilization wrong, and I think I was fortunate to write Fingerprints when I did. I think it caught that moment. If I had published it some years earlier or some years later, I don't think it would have had that impact.
And it is true that actually the people that wrote the movie 2012 mm-hmm. optioned the rights to...
They did indeed. They optioned the rights, and if you can bear to sit through the 20 minutes of credits at the end of that movie, you will see that it does say at the very last line, inspired in part by the book Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock. Yes.
Well, and 2012 is allegedly a disaster movie in modern times.
Yes.
Why would they use your book for that?
Well, actually, I would have liked to have, were I a producer, which I'm not, I would have liked to have seen that movie delve a little more into archaeology.
Yeah.
But what they took from that book, I would say, was just one thing, which was, as far as I know, Fingerprints is the first book that has connected the Mayan calendar with Charles Hapgood's notion of Earth crust displacement. And those two issues were actually key to the scenario in the movie 2012.
And let me
they didn't take anything else from it.
Let me just briefly toss in for people who don't know that Hapgood's theory is that the external crust could slide over the mantle.
That's right.
And therefore the whole Earth has a shift in its crust, even though the inner part is still in the same place.
Indeed, and rather like the skin of an orange moving around the fruit, to give an analogy. And this was the mechanism envisaged in the movie 2012 for the cataclysm that they portrayed there, because Roland Emmerich does do big cataclysm movies, and this was at the heart of that idea. I think that I definitely would have liked to have seen more archaeology in the story, but they focused on the big effects and
it seems strange that they would want to option Fingerprints of the Gods for a movie that only barely touches on two little data points.
Well, see, as the project developed, their ideas of what they were going to do with the project changed, and they became more focused on the cataclysm and less perhaps on the backstory to the cataclysm. That's what they became focused on.
So there may have been some Mayan calendar stuff in the earlier drafts of the script and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and indeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we go into your story, because I want to do the whole arc, mm-hmm. if you were going to try to briefly summarize what we learn from Fingerprints of the Gods, what would you say is the hypothesis or the goal of Fingerprints of the Gods?
At the heart of it, that we are a species with amnesia, that there has been a major forgotten episode in human history, and we are not taking that forgotten episode into account in our understanding of who we are and why we're here. That has been buried partly as a result of global cataclysmic events 12,980 years ago or thereabouts, and partly because there are forces at work in our society that don't want that information known, that want the idea of a simple linear development from primitive Stone Age hunter-gatherers through settled civilization to us, the apex and pinnacle of the human story. And if you're committed to that timeline, then it's very annoying to discover that there was an earlier episode of civilization when humanity did achieve a very high level, which was brought cataclysmically to an end so massively and so severely, as Plato put it, that mankind had to begin again like children with no memory of what went before. I think there are people who do have that memory, but I don't think they want it shared. So that's the message at the heart of Fingerprints of the Gods, I would say.
The people who don't want this to be shared, it appears that there has been a narrative constructed in the average person's mind in which they might listen to what you just said, but then they'll say, well, there's no evidence.
Yeah, because the whole institution of archaeology and mainstream history has set before the public, through the media, through the education system, a timeline for the story of human civilization. And that timeline has become embedded in the way that we think about ourselves. And that timeline is this linear story from primitive cavemen to smart, super sophisticated modern human beings, and that we're supposed to have gone through certain episodes of development. You know, we started to make agriculture. That agriculture provided the possibility for a leisure class who could become the priests and kings in the cities that were formed. And we went on from there. Yes, there were some ups and downs, but by and large, it's been a straight, clean story. And what disturbs that is the possibility that we've forgotten a whole episode of earlier civilization and new bits of archaeology that are coming out, like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which cannot be denied by the mainstream, because mainstream archaeologists have actually found that archaeology, themselves create ripples in this timeline and make it difficult to explain. You see, if you're telling people that hunter-gatherers were this very simple kind of society who were not capable of large-scale feats of engineering and construction, and then suddenly, in the hunter-gatherer epoch, before anything like a city or a civilization is supposed to have existed, you have a very large-scale project with enormous stone circles and multi-ton megaliths being put up and requiring intense organizational skills, management of a workforce, a plan, all of that in place. It doesn't fit with the picture we've been given.